joining us this morning where you are. We're going to talk about the use of electronic health record data in clinical investigations. So what is interesting about this is that historically the FDA has not considered this to be within the purview of a sponsor's responsibilities for overseeing what's happening in terms of using those electronic health record systems at the site level, at the clinical investigator site level. We've seen an evolution. We saw this draft guidance that we're going to talk about come out in 2016. And just recently, the FDA asked for an increase in its budget for fiscal year 2019 so that it could incorporate the use of real-world data from electronic health records to get a better understanding of how we use information in real time in clinical research. So really looking at an integration of clinical care and clinical research. So the thought was that by having real-time information, we'd certainly be able to assess what's happening in the real world with these products once they get out there. But we also, the FDA can also have a better understanding, of course, in terms of what we are doing out there. So this guidance is not quite reflective of that in its entirety. It's, again, an evolution. What we're going to talk about are looking at the responsibilities and processes for how we assess the validity, reliability, and integrity of that electronic source data coming from an electronic health record system. We'll look at the FDA's intentions to assess compliance with 21 CFR Part 11 in terms of those health records, or those electronic health record systems. We'll also look at best practices for using electronic health records in clinical research. I'll probably break down a couple times and call them electronic medical records, but also look at interoperability with these electronic health records. How do they work with one another? How do they work with the systems that we are using to capture data? And we'll also talk about the impact on recommendations for research conducted outside the U.S. So this draft guidance came out to us in May of 2016. And the expectation, and as the FDA puts out in its forward, is to assist sponsors, clinical investigators, CROs, IRBs, and other interested parties in how we use electronic health record data for supporting clinical investigations of FDA-regulated products. So as we know, these are going to fall under the use of our clinical investigators, our supporting groups. It might be an imaging clinic. It might be a hospital where that individual is seen. It might be the actual clinic where the clinical investigator is conducting their research. But they're used by healthcare institutions for healthcare to integrate real-time electronic healthcare information from medical devices and different healthcare providers involved in the care of patients to have aggregate information about that patient, really, but of course that research participant as well. So what does the guidance tell us? We have to make a determination as to whether we are going to use those electronic health records as source data in our clinical investigations. What do we know about source documentation? What is the FDA's acronym for how that data needs to be presented? It's that ALCOA, right? Attributable, legible, contemporaneous, original, accurate. We also need to have it be enduring and available and complete. So what are the standards to which we assess, against which we assess these electronic health records? Certainly if we have an electronic health record that's interoperable with other electronic systems that support those clinical investigations, we're going to be in a better situation. So electronic medical records that can actually maybe pre-populate or populate your anesthesia record in terms of, well, what were the vitals during the procedure? What concomitant medications were provided? But regardless, we go back to that ALCOA, regardless of whether this information is paper or electronic, it has to meet the standards for reflecting quality and integrity of our safety and efficacy data. Because the FDA is going to look at that information and look to that information to be able to make a determination as to whether your product is safe and effective and whether it should be approved. If we are using those electronic health records, they need to be available for review. They need to meet those requirements for access, for record keeping, and record retention requirements. So as an auditor, I have worked on some studies where a hospital had record systems that were Part 11 compliant. They had validation testing done. They had certificates of validation from the vendors that, yes, this system is Part 11 compliant.